morning, and welcome to the Sanctum Secorum reading room. Whether you are new to the literary world of Appendix N, you're a diehard fan of the genre, or even just tuning in to see how certain titles might tie into a particular set of role-playing games, we invite you to join us as we dive into the history and influence of Appendix N. We'd like to open our library to you and inspire readers to explore these new worlds. Allow me to introduce our Keepers of Mysteries for this evening. You have myself, Keeper Jen, and with me as always is the, we can't say illustrious, we used verbose last night, the ever so awesome Keeper Bob.
Good evening, everyone.
As a quick reminder to those of you with us here on the Twitch channel tonight, we do have those channel points, which you can redeem for weird trivia or, I don't know, Bob could break into song for you. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure there's FCC regulations about that.
Okay, well, yeah, there's that. Plus, we do have a couple of giveaways coming up later in the hour, and you might have your chance to use channel points to weigh your votes on what we end up reading next month. But tonight, we are going to dive into the final published Conan story from author Robert E. Howard. This is, of course, Red Nails, which was serialized from June to October 1936, that is, in Weird Tales magazine. Take it away, Bob.
Well, Weird Tales described the story as one of the strangest stories ever written. The tale of a barbarian adventurer, a woman pirate, and a weird roofed city inhabited by the most peculiar race of men ever spawned. Robert E. Howard described it as a Conan yarn and the grimmest, bloodiest, and most merciless story of the series so far. Too much raw meat, maybe, but I merely portrayed what I honestly believe would be the reactions of certain types of people and the situations on which the plot of the story hung. Red Nails begins in the jungles, far to the south of any known civilized or barbarian kingdoms. Valeria of the Red Brotherhood is fleeing persecution and is followed into the wilderness by Conan, a fellow adventurer who wishes for an alliance with Valeria. The pair journey towards a mysterious walled city which appears deserted. The city, which is known as Zuccotle, is a massive structure completely enclosed and roofed off by an emerald dome. A single great hallway runs across the entire city. However, no streets or open courtyards are present. The two separate and search the city's empty corridors. Valeria encounters a man named Decottle, who she joins in his feud between two factions which dwell in the once populous city. Soon, Decottle invites Conan and Valeria into the stronghold of his tribe, the Tekahutli? I'm going to go with Tekahutli. Eventually, the couple are welcomed by the rulers of Zuccotle, Olmec, and Tuscala. After a ritual, Olmec reveals the history of his civilization and its ancient war with the other inhabitants and the meanings of the red nails driven into a pillar within the Olmec stronghold.
Okay, I did like the explanation of the title. That was pretty cool. It's not at all what I was expecting. And yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Zuccotle. Oh,
well, you look at the spellings of the names. The entire story has kind of this Mesoamerican feel to it.
Oh, most definitely, yeah.
It certainly doesn't carry through to the original illustrations from Weird Tales by Harold Daly, I think it was, or Harold Delay. But certainly you get that feel with all of these names. I mean, they're straight out of Mexico and South America and Central America. It's just wonderful.
Well, and it's funny, you used a quote in there from Howard himself about too much raw meat, maybe. This is part of correspondence written to Clark Ashton Smith right after he sold Red Nails to Weird Tales. And it ends with, it may sound fantastic to link the term realism with Conan, but as a matter of fact, his supernatural adventures aside, he is the most realistic character I ever evolved. And I gotta say, having just read Tower of the Elephant, last month, for a different different show, heavy air quotes, I think there is definitely an evolution in Conan. There's actually some respect that he's showing to Valeria, and it's not the Conan that we've all come to know and love, where I'd grab woman by hair, take in corner.
That's the thing. No, see, that's the thing. That Conan that you cite, as we all know and love, is not Conan, right? That is an image people have gathered over the years, especially from the films, but that's not Conan. It's much like, people think that Tarzan by Burroughs only grunted, and he
Yeah,
was
exactly.
very well spoken. And
yes, I'm using the stereotype, Bob.
right, but that is not the creation of Mr. Robert Irvin Howard.
Irvin, okay.
Robert Irvin Howard, born January 22nd, 1906, passed away June 11th, 1936. And for those who are unfamiliar, he is the person for whom the term sword and sorcery was coined, specifically the Conan stories. They are the origin of the term sword and sorcery.
Coined by Liber, if I recall.
Coined by Liber while answering a question from Michael Moorcock. So yes, it is. Michael Moorcock was trying to figure out the best way to refer to the Conan stories, and there were various ideas bandied back and forth, and Liber coined sword and sorcery.
Now, the first publication being in 1936, it was nearly 70 years after that the Conquering Sword of Conan was published, which is the version that I had the luxury of reading, illustrated by Gregory Manchets. If any of you are familiar, it's very evocative, even if it's in black and white. This particular volume includes notes on things like the original typescripts, for which, by the way, Red Nails was found double-spaced, cleanly typed, double-spaced, just a couple of notes. There's a full draft chronology for anyone who's interested in this geeky stuff. Notations on every change that was made from the original text to this version, including commas, inserting hyphens at the line breaks. I'm geeking out too much about this, but I know that we have also discussed Howard in previous reading room shows. So we've gone over a lot of aspects of his life, and I thought that maybe I would pull out a couple of cool finds, like, again, more correspondence between he and other authors. And I was really loving the opportunity to dig into this side of the history about him.
Well, and the edition that you read is part of a series that collects all of Howard. There's one dedicated to the Solomon Kane stories. There's another one or two that cover. I think there's another one for Conan. There's one for the Kull stories, one for the horror stories.
This is the third of the Conan collection.
Okay, so
there's also. Go ahead.
But it is an absolutely great collection.
One very interesting fact is that there's no evidence that Howard wrote about Conan after this story, even in unpublished works. And it's speculated that this may be in part due to the fact that Weird Tales was unable to continue paying him regularly.
Well, that, and I mean, his stories didn't have a long lead time between purchase and publication either. So just based on the timing, I mean, this was published posthumously. There wasn't likely a whole lot of time.
Interesting. How come we have a question in our Twitch chat, how come Tarzan isn't really considered Appendix N?
Well, I think, and far be it for me to speak for Gary Gygax, right? I mean,
Fair.
who put together the list, but he focused more on the sword and planet materials, and I think that's more of what he was reading as opposed to Tarzan.
Oh,
Although
the
I
John
believe
Carter.
Appendix N also mentions the Pellucidar, the center of the Earth stories. Uh, uh,
Oh, At Earth's Core and all of those. Yeah.
right, which originated in one of the Tarzan novels. So there's a roundabout connection, but it's not really the sort of thing that was inspiring, I think, to D&D, because one person in a jungle wasn't quite the same as facing off with swords or lasers against Martian
I
hordes.
was going to say, then one person walking through a jungle with a sword, right? The sword kind of makes it.
Yeah. I mean, and this, but as stories go, this particular story is dark. It is very dark. There's actually a great essay on the Goodman Games website by Jason Ray Carney that focuses on themes of dehumanizing violence and compassion in Red Nails, and
Hmm.
how those themes are approached in the text. Let me see here. I can drop that.
Well, that's true. The last stories that he wrote about Conan are definitely more realistic than fantastic.
Eh, there's a
Well,
dragon in this story. There's a
well,
dragon in this story. Let's.
but as far as the humans go, right? They're they're more seasoned. They're almost like a raw uh, example of humanity. Um, but this was also written at a time when his mother's health was declining at an alarming rate. So
Oh yes.
possibly these horrific events that he's writing about are in resonance with this in real life. I
Yeah,
mean,
Howard was definitely at a dark place when he wrote this. There's a lot of really heavy concepts at play. He wasn't kidding when he said this was his most merciless story. Uh, between just, you know, all virtual sacrifice, right? I mean, the brutal slitting of throats, not by Conan, but just seeing people as this has happened. These almost sacrificial moments. The topic of rape comes up several times as well. This is a dark Conan story.
well, and honestly, I was told that this was his, well, I read, I should say, that this was his foray into touching on to topics like lesbianism or, you know, not following the straight path, if you will. And while there's a tone there, I walked away going, that was nothing like what I expected, but it was good. I enjoyed it more than most Conan stories, and I think because there was a heroine at the top of it. We open on Valeria, right? We open with this woman who has stood at the head of crews of ships, of armies, of men, and flat out will not take any of their crap and is only powerless if they have numbers. And I think every woman would feel that sort of identification.
I could see that bit of identification, as well as her exasperation of, why won't men just let me live a man's life, which is one of Valeria's quotes from the story.
Right.
Um, but yeah, alongside of Tower of the Elephant, this is considered to be one of Robert E. Howard's best stories, not best Conan stories. These two are considered some of his best stories, period. And I mean, they were
Yes.
massively influential across all numbers of fields. I mean, it was the inspiration for the D&D adventure Dark Tower by Janelle Jaquays, and she has made no secret about being inspired by Red Nails.
Aw, John David Speaks says, "You guys are the best couple in the TTRPG." I don't know if I believe that, but I'll say aw and thanks.
Well, I see, was Conan more successful for Howard or Tarzan? Well, yes. I mean,
Oh,
so written by different authors, right? Tarzan was Burroughs, Conan was Howard. Um, However, of the two, if you want to look at which characters were more successful at the time for each author, I would dare say that Tarzan was more successful. Certainly, a lot more written.
oh
Burroughs
yes.
had a much longer career. Tarzana, California, is named for Tarzan, right? I mean, far more films. Both have been very lucrative in the long run to the estates of, but I think Tarzan was more financially lucrative at the time. But then again, Robert E. Howard is one of the big three of weird tales, right? Robert E. Howard, Lovecraft, and Clark Ashton Smith. So I don't know.
Yes.
I don't have the numbers in front of me.
The quote that I absolutely love from Lovecraft himself: "For stark living fear, what other writer is even in the running with Robert E. Howard?"
Oh yeah. Oh
That's high praise indeed, right?
well, I mean, Robert E. Howard could write horror, and he could write horror materials. I mean, his story Pigeons from Hell. Stephen King stated that it was one of the finest horror horror novels or horror stories written in that century, which was the 20th century. So when Howard wanted to bring horror and darkness to a story, he certainly could. And I mean, he was
It worked in this story
yeah,
even.
he was a pen pal with Lovecraft, and he wrote
Mhm.
tales that tied into the mythos and vice versa. So he was very well rounded. He could write boxing stories, western stories, tales of adventure, tales of horror, and in this one, he combines a few of those fields.
And
So,
even Paul Anderson was influenced by the furious, galloping narrative pace that Howard tends to have in his stories. Although part of me wonders if that's mostly due to the serialized nature of his writings, right? If you're publishing your work in all of these pulps, they kind of have to be quick and self-contained chapters.
well, to a point, right? I mean, yeah, that's that. Certainly, writing for the pulps gave you an opportunity and a reason to kind of be floored or expound because you're being paid by the word, but you couldn't go overly so or things would get rejected. But let's talk a little bit. Since we've talked about Howard a bit, let's talk a little bit about the book, right? About the story itself, because this is such
Honestly,
a different tale than Tower of the Elephant, which we just
although
read last month.
it really did feel like it started in a similar fashion, uh complete with like the gem crusted tower that you see Valeria at the top of, that we open on this scene, and I really thought we were like midway into Tower of the Elephant, just with a different female lead. uh I'm glad that it took a change.
Well, yeah, I mean it's a very different tale in my opinion than Tower of the Elephant. I don't
Oh
I
yeah.
don't see the similarities at all. I mean, we and I'm kind of curious about that. We don't start with the gem encrusted tower. We start with her in the mountains, right? Because they're going through the forest and up into the rocks.
Right, that it just, that was the imagery that I had uh from one of the recollections of hers at the beginning.
Yeah, because this story starts, in
Mhm.
situ, right? I mean, we are already going. Valeria is on the run, and Conan is following her, almost like was it Sir Roland to the Dark Tower went and the Man in Black followed behind. Valeria to the Dome City went and Conan followed behind. And it's a great
Um,
introduction of a character that, while she only appears in literature, right? Valeria only appears here. more people are going to know Valeria from her appearances in Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer. She is shown there as an equal and partner to Conan, and in this story, while she is definitely, we will say, a romantic interest of Conan's, but he also knows that, when he scoffs, is like, oh, I'll take that sword away from you. She's like, no, you won't, and Conan knows he can't. So
Right.
she is even there shown to be very very competent and equal, and it is definitely kind of a change from a lot of fiction at the time.
Right. And he says, well, good thing I was following you because I killed the other guy that had been following you. And she's just giving him a lot of side eyes, my impression there. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, sure, because I couldn't handle him myself. Okay. And then they get into a situation with we'll call it a dragon,
they
where
do. They eventually call it a dragon, and that
yeah,
that I mean, I read the description. And I because the description, the head bigger than that of a crocodile was further extended on a long scaled neck on which stood up rows of serrated spikes, and after it crushing down the briars and saplings waddled the body of a titan, a gigantic barrel-bellied torso on absurdly short legs. And I was
just
like,
makes me giggle.
and it talks about the long spiked tail. I was like, well, that's a dinosaur. That's that's like a maybe a yeah, that maybe a stegosaurus or something. That's a dinosaur. And then in the story, they're like, that's a dragon. I was like, but that's a dinosaur. And then I looked at the original illustration, and the original illustration, I was like, oh, that's a dragon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's when uh, Conan starts to see her as more of an equal. He still feels protective of her, but he knows.
I think he
Oh
sees her as an
no,
equal from the get-go, but
but it was in
he's
the.
still very I would say he is covetous of her.
I would say protective. The way that he watches over while she sleeps, and he doesn't sleep much at all, and he never wakes her for her watch like he's supposed to, and she feels kind of coddled and bristles at this. And then they make it into the underground city, and they start. Uh, he comes, unfortunately, to her rescue, but sees that she has laid out plenty before he even got there.
But yeah, before we even get into the city, let's go back to this dragon for a minute, because
That's
dealing with this
true.
thing
There's a part
is
that you really love here.
well, I mean, just the way he deals with it. He's like, okay, well, we'll make spears. He's like, well, the sticks are too thin, the vines are too flimsy. So he makes this giant bundle of sticks and vines and
Like braiding it
fashions a
together.
spear, but he knows the spear's not enough. And this kind of goes back to Conan's barbarian roots, right? Barbarian in the truest sense of someone who was lived on the land. He is not necessarily vulgar or base, but he is more of the land. He is less quote unquote civilized, and so he's like, oh well, poisonous apples of Derketa. Well, that'll do it. And he dips the blade in, and he poisons the thing by stabbing it. I think he stabs it in the eye, which is just awful
Oh,
enough as it
it was in
is.
the mouth because it finally was able to
Oh,
get
that's
away.
right. But then as it's staggering away poisoned, it's thirsty and it's going blind from the poison. So it's like, but it is that connection, right? He is not a man of genteel society, and it really, to me, that really struck home. He is a
And
man
that
of the land and the wilderness.
and his knowledge of that was the first time that Valeria went, huh, with a little eyebrow. Oh, okay. Because she was saying, hey, well, at least there's fruit here. We needn't starve. Uh, well,
No,
you're
we don't.
more than welcome, but uh, one drop will kill you. Wait, what? So I I guess I'm starting to bristle at all of the saved the damsel in distress moments, but it proved him useful to Valeria at that moment.
Well, and at the end of the day, it is a Conan story, not a Valeria story. And so
Yeah,
there
yeah.
is that, right? um, but
Although Valeria gets a lot more screen time than Conan does in this, or at least it seems that way.
I think it seems that way. I think overall it's fairly well rounded and divided. And I think that the inclusion of Valeria is also a very important storytelling device because then you can see what's going on in both camps within the city essentially at the same time. You can start getting a feel for things. And oh my God, the abandoned city, which is certainly not abandoned, but the atmosphere, the way it is described, you could almost hear the hollow echo of footfalls through the stone. It was just
Yeah.
it was just so real. It was so present.
Oh, yeah. You can almost feel it around you as you're reading. And yeah, it makes for uh, an uncomfortable feeling as you're reading this. And then all of a sudden they come to this big brass door that once it's closed, they're not worried. Nobody can breach it. Wait, what? um, okay, that seems awfully lackadaisical of you. And
Yeah.
as we find out later, well, they kind of weren't wrong, but uh, but this is not the show in which we talk about things we'd like to stat up. Otherwise, I would
No,
totally
because
be talking about
there
that
was yeah
flute.
there was plenty of stuff that
That
would be
flute,
tabled.
man.
But I mean, just the text itself is so descriptive.
Oh yeah.
Softly as phantoms they descended the stair and came to the mouth of a quarter black as night. I just I understand
Mm-hmm.
it's fairly basic prose, but it just the way it scans is just so perfect. And I think this was Howard at the peak of his craft. And
And as he commented to P. Schuyler Miller, who I think was also acting as one of the editors for Weird Tales at the time, as for Conan's eventual fate, frankly, I can't predict it. In writing these yarns, which I love his use of, by the way, I've always felt less as creating them than as if I were simply chronicling his adventures as he told them to me.
yeah, which was almost a common conceit
Yeah.
at the time, right? Where authors would say, "Oh, well, this is the story that was told to me." There's an entire series in Daw, the Dre Prescott stories by I think
As told to.
by Akers, and well, Dre Prescott told me these stories, and so yeah, and when you're writing things on such a quick turnaround, right? I mean, if you look at authors today, when they can spend years working on a novel, it's still kind of a voyage of discovery, even if they've outlined it, kind of have an idea where they want it to go. And Howard was just like, slap paper to the typewriter, let's go. And
Now, you mentioned the Mesoamerican feel to things. Um, that certainly has to tie in not just with the names, but the fact that many of the residents of Hercotlan or Huchotl, yeah, that one, uh, when in distress, they would cry, in Set's name, or in the name of Set. So do you think there's a strict correlation there?
well, so the set of Conan is not the set of Egypt, although there are similarities, right? Just like the Mitra of Howard's works is not the Mitra of the real world. So
But I'm sensing some corollaries to other systems,
right, so it's
other
just well,
games.
and of course I had to deep dive into all that when I was working on Dark Tower, um, but it's in Conan, it's sort of a darker god, and certainly the sort of people that call out to Set are maybe not always the kind of people you want to be hanging out with, right? They're not the ones that are going to trust you.
Hey,
Or you should be trusting.
that's actually a really great synopsis for what happens here. Uh, I I could not believe the deception given about the dragon. Well, they called them dragon gods, um, trying to say that there were still many out there. Oh no, it turns out there was just that one left, and Conan killed
Well,
it.
well,
And that's why
they
Olmec
weren't
couldn't
actually
believe
sure
it.
about that. They weren't actually sure about that because he was like, "Hey, so once we finish killing off your enemies, you're going to help us. We'll show you how to use the poison, and we'll take out the rest of them because there's more of them out there." And they talk about how that's how they ended up in this city that was ancient when they came across it. And that's the thing, right? This whole bizarre blood feud between these two groups, this never
One
ending.
person.
Well, and this never ending feud. They've only been here for 50 years, right? I mean, they have completely descended into madness and chaos in 50 years. And
But that was like 3 generations for them.
well, yeah,
They
no,
they
that's
were born there, they will die there.
well,
It's
and
self-prophetic,
die
really.
there they would. I mean, that was the whole thing about the red nails, right? The black column of ebony with all of the red dots scarring the surface, and all of those were red nails representing lives taken. And that's
Oh,
just wow.
oh, you just reminded me of one that I found that was provided to me. A quote from Fritz Leiber about the Conan writings, especially. A mass of glimmering black for the menace, an ice blue cascade for the hero, between them a swath of crimson for battle, passion, and blood. Yes, you're right. Howard had a really great way with the delineation of colors, especially. Uh, so Valeria of the Red Brotherhood tells us a lot.
Yes, it does. But I mean, so what? These people arrived here. You know, they were pursued by enter pursuit by dragons as opposed to exit pursuit by a bear, I suppose. And they lived in peace in this area for 5 years until someone decided to get married, and two other people wanted to get married to her as well. And so then one of those guys stole her away, very like Helen of Troy, and war broke out, and everything just kind of went
And
to
you've got the Judas who pretends to help a friend, but then goes and marries the one that he wants or steals that girl. And later on in the story, we find out from the friend to Chottle that no, Taskela, no, she's a witch who possesses the secret of perpetual youth. And it turns out the whole war was between between the tribes was over her, but she looks like she can't be any older than mid-20s, 30 maybe.
yeah.
I mean, no older than Valeria herself. And it was
Never
really,
trust a witch in a Conan story.
it well, and she didn't even do the kidnapping of Valeria herself. She sent a servant to do it, who in turn, Valeria took out pretty much every frustration she had by whipping this poor slave servant. Yeah. And started to realize I'm enjoying this too much. I need to stop. It was almost like she had that moment of I'm being overly masochistic about this, and I'm not going to get any answers.
Yeah.
It was a really bizarrely tense scene. And given all of the preface of, oh, this is the story, and no, that didn't go at all like I expected either.
See now, in fairness, the scene you're talking about, to me, reads a little bit different, and to me the scene reads a little bit, I think, more tawdry. It's like very like 70s exploitation film, I mean, where she's threatening to strip the other one naked and spank her until she talks. Well,
Whip, not well. Okay, that
no,
doesn't make it
she
better.
actually she uses the term spank. It's one of those things like this is
It was fun.
it is what it is,
It was
right? But
a foray, yes, to a different side of the usual.
so
Uh,
but
yeah,
so in that for me it had the scene in some ways it felt kind of out of place from the rest of the story because it didn't seem serious enough for the character of Valeria, right? I mean, Valeria is she is no hero. She's a pirate. She's a reaver, and so
I
that
see what you did there.
that just didn't really seem to fit. I mean, I could certainly see her just beating the crap out of someone until they talked, but the way the scene was written to me
It was
felt
obviously written by a man in the 30s.
yes, that
Okay.
that is true.
We can agree on that part.
Yeah, so that felt a little out of place even for the character, but then everything beyond that just slips back into the thick darkness, right? I mean, we've by this point we've
Yes.
already encountered the crawler, which we haven't seen so much as it has been present and struck at in the darkness by Conan. So there's all sorts of just dark eldritch weird going on behind the scenes, and once you kind of push these warring factions out of the way, and you've got this witch and everything else that is going on beneath, there is something far more sinister than just a simple blood feud going on.
No, they are disrupted, or Valeria is disrupted as Conan is awakened by the cries as that door that can't be breached is breached.
Right, because it's Chekhov's door. Once we
Right.
have told you the door cannot be breached, in the third act the door will be breached.
Exactly it. That's yes. Uh, and the battle goes about as expected. But I don't remember. Did they end up bringing what was left of the crawler with them for that part? I don't think
No,
we saw the
the
crawler again. We just
we
heard
encounter we encounter the crawler the second time it is dead, and that is after this battle when they go across to make sure there's no survivors on the other side.
gotcha.
And
That's right.
and and
That's right.
the crawler, gape mouthed and milk eyed,
Mm-hmm.
this giant snaggle toothed snake thing with almost like saber fangs crossing.
So Prince Olmec sends Conan and uh, two or three of the remaining dozen that live over to the other side to make sure none of the other side lives, and 20
And
people
why does
get
he really do
breached.
this?
That was
Why
it.
does he really do this? Because he learned nothing from the feud about women being
Right,
grabbed and hoisted away.
right. And he also whispers to our liaison to kill him. And of course, that goes horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah,
But
that goes
not
horribly,
before
horribly
he
wrong too.
tells Conan that no, the prince told me to kill you. Oh, well, here, let me make this easy on you then. You're gonna die anyway. I'll just make it quicker. Uh, and now would that be true Conan fashion? A little bit of uh compassion thrown in with
Well, yeah, I
dispassion
mean,
the evil. I haven't read
Conan
enough
was
Conan to know.
Conan was not unnecessarily cruel.
I I mean, in this story, that's correct.
Well,
I've
pretty much in
only
all the
read
stories,
a
he's never
few others.
unnecessarily cruel.
Good to know, I suppose. And he does get back in time to once again save the damsel because it's not a Valeria story; it's Conan's story.
Yes,
Yes.
but he does more than save Valeria. He saves the prince, right? Um,
Does he?
yes, he cuts him loose, because Olmec had been captured. Conan frees him.
Right, but I didn't
Okay, he
think.
doesn't save him for long because things don't end well for anybody other than Conan and Valeria in a Conan
Thank
story.
you. Thank you.
But he saves him, and that's then when we descend into the secrets beneath the city. And that's really where we get to the big finale of what's really been going on beneath this feud.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, and at that point, Conan continues to show Valeria respect, which is kind of intriguing. And I suppose they walk off happily ever after. I mean,
Well,
that's kind of my ultimate takeaway. They
while
will
the
live another day.
I would say while the opening of the story is very Conan, hey, you know, at the end, it's more the end of it is almost more like a buddy cop film, right? They're like, well, we guess we ended that feud. Ha ha ha! Nudge nudge. Oh, it's a long way back to the coast. I mean, yes, they have their romantic moment there. They kiss. There's no longer this struggle between them, and now
There's
they're like,
almost
okay,
a mutual respect.
yes, and now we're going to go and show the world what plundering means, and that is where we end after we've had monsters and magic and witchcraft and blood feuds.
And we shall make beautiful Sumerian Aquilonian babies.
And Ghostly Squid is like, but that is another story. Yes, and unfortunately, that story will not be told. Uh, it's And it's kind of weird anyway, because Howard didn't write the Conan stories chronologically, so they skip all over the place. So this while the last Conan story written is not the last adventure of Conan chronologically that he wrote, but it's the only appearance of Valeria, who in some ways has some similarities to Red Sonja, the original, not the comic book version, right? And so yeah, it's all it is to use Howard's term. It's a ripping yarn. It really is. It's a great yarn. It's a wonderful story. It's very dark. Parts of it are very bleak, but it is so well written. It is so captivating, and it shows why Howard is still so highly regarded today.
Now, less than a month before his death, again at age 30, he did write to H.P. Lovecraft that he found it more and more difficult to write anything but Western yarns, and said, I have always felt that if I ever accomplished anything worthwhile in the literary field, it would be with stories dealing of the central and western frontier. Now, while I would be very interested to see Conan in, shall we say, weird frontiers,
Well, Howard didn't write Conan in the Wild West. He wrote westerns.
Yeah.
He wrote westerns. He wrote boxing stories, and while a lot of his stories certainly bear the stigma of social opinions of the time, which we can just say are less than appropriate, they reflect those, but without malice, without additional degradation. And in some of the stories, he runs counter to those opinions, which is really nice. Howard was definitely a forward thinking for his time in many ways. Not all of them, but in many ways. But it is
of his time, yeah.
Well, and it's very sad, unfortunately, that after his mother passed, he spiraled into depression, and and like I said, this obviously was written in a very dark place, and shortly after he ended things,
and to do our due diligence, if you ever feel in a comparable state, you can call, text, or chat 988 and be connected to help. I will post that full message in our Twitch chat. And there's also the Lifeline phone number of 1-800-273-TALK.
At the end of the day, when
Yeah.
you look at an author who today we still reread and admire. Anybody can be in that.
And he didn't think this was worthwhile. That is what baffles me.
Well, that's really the kind of the heartbreak of the whole thing is Howard is still so highly regarded. There is, of course, there's Robert E. Howard Days. There's a festival celebrating him and his work annually.
Yes.
There's awards for scholarship in Robert E. Howard's studies. I mean,
after a mere 20 years of writing, if that.
Not even, right? I mean, he was 30 when he passed.
That's why I said if that, less than 20 years of writing, you've accomplished that much of a name for yourself. But unfortunately, it wasn't realized right then at that moment. So that's why we bring things like this up.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'd like to talk about an up and coming designer at this point.
Hey, let's talk about something a little lighter, a little happier.
A little lighter. As many of you know, Sanctum Media is in partnership with Ugandan game designer Ashraf Braden. We've released our fourth in the new line of DCC items. This one is Camila, a sentient river tributary and the avenging elemental assassin of an ancient water god. Camila is a river that swallows entire villages in the night, and river elementals is our new DCC collection for you, based on the Ugandan folklore. And the river elementals are a lesser known type of water elemental bound to the material plane. And greatest among them is Camila, an elder of their kind that is far more dangerous and powerful. Also included with this release are punctuation. I can't read tonight. Sorry, pronunciation notes. Woohoo! And audio clips provided by the author himself, for those wanting to get the most out of those Ugandan creations. And the micro release costs a mere $1. One monies. And this is Ashraf's 4th RPG release with us. Actually 5th if he had something in our Sanctum Secorum Quarterly magazine.
He did not.
Oh, he did not yet.
He did not because he was going to have something in Sanctum Secorum Quarterly, and then another publisher said he was donating that to.
He got sniped.
He did not get sniped. Someone offered to buy it, and I recommended that. Yes,
you take it.
This is what you should be doing. Don't give us something for free if someone's going to pay you for it.
Right. But our monthly releases from him will be continuing throughout the foreseeable future. He's also planning on contributing to Sanctum Secorum Quarterly next.
Yes.
For the summer issue. All proceeds go to Ashraf himself.
All Sanctum's proceeds. Drive-through still gets their cut. But all Sanctum sales proceeds and affiliate proceeds, which is a way that we managed to recover some of Drive-through's cut. All
and that makes a really big dent in someone's life. We're so ethnocentric, us Westerners. We have houses and space and vehicles, and Ugandans don't. $40 a month is his typical income, or is that his rent for the month?
His rent is $41 a month. The average wage in his area is less than $3 a day. And so
a day?
Yes. So
Not per hour, but per day.
per day. So being
All right,
able
people.
to create materials
Yeah.
drawing from Ugandan folklore and have people around the world read it has been very exciting for him, but it has also opened some great new doors for him. So he's hoping that once things you know, really get rolling, that he's going to be able to bring in some Ugandan artists, maybe some other writers, and he really wants to start expanding on things.
And
And
our
it's going to take
latest,
time to get there, but he's
right.
got that road in front of him, and he's looking down it.
And we have Ari-Matti Paipo from Finland, if I recall correctly, doing art for the cover of the last two of these. And
He's done the art for the
lastly,
last three.
okay.
Artist Gregory Dees did the cover for the
Oh,
first.
he did the first. Awesome. And Bob was sitting near me during my editing of the last issue, and he could see how much I was just enjoying doing the pronunciation guides. So it really is a labor of love, and it's for an excellent cause, and for nothing else but to get exposure to the culture and the folklore of
New
another place.
new material from new voices. It's not medieval Germany, right? Or medieval England.
Very
The two of which kind of get bandied about and merged together for most fantasy settings. His stuff is different. I mean, the first release was an invisible creature that stalked schools and preyed on children. We've had a character class based on invisible herdsmen. There's been a lot of really great stuff, and it's different. It stands out.
And very awesome stuff. And yeah, the audio clips alone, just I could just play those for. You know what, Ashraf needs to read a book for us. We could just have some audio clips there, right? Okay, and with that, it is time once again to announce a winner along with a pair of giveaways. Live listeners, if you're paying attention, might want to flip back over to this screen for a bit. One of these giveaways is for the live audience, the other is for all of our viewers and listeners. And that's right, it is time to enter the Sanctum Secorum's very own
Prize Closet of Mystery.
I can't get
So
enough of that.
so let's start with announcing the winner of last month's final giveaway, which was a copy of Nerves by Lester Del Rey. Matter of fact, it is.
Del Rey is
It
good
is.
stuff.
Let's see if it'll show up. It is this copy of Nerves.
Ooh.
And this month's winner is Stuart Greenfield, and we will be reaching out shortly to get details so we can get that prize mailed out. And moving on, then we come to tonight's live giveaway. As a reminder, everyone watching the show live is eligible for both giveaways. But tonight's first prize, since we're in sort of a sword and sorcery state of mind, is The Enchanted Planet by Pierre Barbet. And it is a nice classic sword and sorcery, sword and planet DAW. It is DAW number 156 for those who are collecting DAWs like I do. And the copy goes to the live viewer who can first correctly give the answer to the following question. Famously, the first Conan story ever published, The Phoenix on the Sword, was actually a rewrite of an earlier rejected Call tale titled By This Axe I Rule. However, there was an earlier proto-Conan story in Strange Tales of Mystery and Terror. The story was about a man named John O'Brien who seemed to relive his past as a brutish black-haired warrior named Conan of the Reavers. So, what was the title of this pre-Conan Conan story? Was it A, The Song of the Bats, B, The Dream Snake, C, People of the Dark, or D, Skulls in the Stars?
This kind of makes me think of Moorcock with the Eternal Champion, with all of the aliases for the character names.
And Dirk Dentley got it first with C, People of the Dark, followed closely by Ghostly
Nice.
Squid. No wrong answers this time. The other three are all Howard titles, but they're all Howard horror story titles.
Mad Google skills here.
Yeah, quite possibly, but you never know. You never know. Our listeners tend to be well read. So if you're watching the show and didn't win, Ghostly, or you're listening to a replay in the lead up to our next episode, you can enter to win our monthly drawing simply by dropping an email to thehub@sanctum.media with your name. Entry should have the subject line Prize Closet Mystery. And this month's prize is Gate of Ivrel by C.J. Sherry. And that is a DAW UE 1615. So that is our drawing giveaway prize for this month.
Okay. And now we've oh, Ghosty Squid just wanted to graciously decline. Seriously?
You're allowed to win more than one Ghostly Squid. It's okay. So,
Okay,
but that is then going to take us, if we're going to talk about the prize that we're going to have next month, we should probably figure out what we're going to read for next month.
Well, before we put the poll up, let's go over our choices.
Sounds good. What do we have, Jen?
The first would be Michael Moorcock, The Chronicles of Coram. That would be the first book, The Knight of the Swords. We have Fred Saberhagen, get the second Book of Swords. Do I remember the first? Might have to reread that too. John Bellairs, The Face in the Frost. Ooh, nice insertion on this one. Manly Wade Wellman. This is a surprise to Jen. Who Fears the Devil? So Elena, our lovely Twitch mistress, has put the current poll up. Just click on the little down arrow to get to it. What to read next? And remember, you can use your channel points to vote, or to weigh your votes, I should say. You can also use your channel points for those weird trivia or
well, right now we're I think people are waiting their votes. Right now it is neck and neck between Moorcock and Saberhagen, with Manly Wade Wellman trailing behind.
Can I weigh my votes too?
I would assume so. If you've got channel points, right?
Oh yeah, because I've never been on this channel before, Bob. I don't have any points.
Boy, this is going.
So which one are you voting for, Bob?
Well, you were really excited about Who Fears the Devil, but I will gladly read The Knight of the Swords by Michael Moorcock.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, we have a title. Is a Fast of the Eternal Champion. You can't go wrong.
All right. Oh, and it looks like we have a pre-populated link here, so people can get it if they don't have it already on their shelves of glory, and follow along with us next month. And I believe that show will be on May 23rd, if I'm looking at the calendar correctly.
Yeah, next month we have Sanctum Secorum. Overall, our shows have a special schedule. I'll go over that real quick. So May 9th, we have an episode of Sanctum Secorum Live, featuring author Zach Rosenberg, to celebrate the release of his debut, the Jewish weird Western novella Hungers as Old as This Land. And it's fantastic. It's a fantastic read. I'm really looking forward to talking to him about it. That is our May 9th show. May 16th is the next episode of the Sanctum Secorum Reading Room, where we are discussing the Knight of the Swords. Our normal reading room night, which would have been May 23rd, is going to be the Sanctum Secorum podcast with all three of us, with Mark Bruner, and we will be having our discussion of Leigh Brackett's tale, The Hounds of Skaith.
Oh, yeah, Jen's got lots of reading ahead of her. Oof. Okay, so May 16th is Moorcock.
Correct.
Moorcock, Knight of the Swords. Got it.
Yes.
Okay. I'll put it here in the chat so we can all remember. And I know I'm typing while I talk. I apologize.
So yes, so May there will be 3 shows from the Sanctum
3
Secorum.
Tuesdays in a row, starting the 9th.
Yep.
Wow. Oof. Okay. So actually, it's right after War of the Cyclops Con, because
It's
that
right after War of the
was
Cyclops Con,
on the
and
6th
then
and 7th.
and it's right before UK Games Expo, right? Isn't that where we end on the 23rd?
Right before Memorial Day weekend. UK Games Expo is the 2nd through 4th of June.
Oh, so you've got, okay, gotcha.
Sorry, I have to leave so I can lose a day to get over there. So we won't be able to do it on the last Tuesday. But you get us 3 times next month. Apologies ahead of time, I guess. You know, at least we'll be awake for you, which is always like hit or
Of course
miss.
we'll be awake. If we're not awake, Elena will just yell into the microphone until we're awake.
True. Yeah, as we just got confirmation. Yeah.
and thank you to Elena for producing the show and putting up with the fact that we're doing 3 next month.
And thank you to Goodman Games for their unending support of all things Appendix N and Sanctum Secorum. And I hope Joseph Goodman is just as excited about everything we've been delving into as he was on day 1. And thank you, of course, to our Twitch fans who come and watch us babble about books live. It's really fun to have people to bounce things off of, even if you're not on screen. So we do value you.
And speaking of things live, I posed the question on social media, and I'll pose it here as well. So we have essentially 2 podcasts and a series of specials, which have for the longest time been Sanctum Secorum Live. But now all of Sanctum Secorum is live, and so that name
There's some weird series of events, yeah.
Yes, so that name isn't necessarily as definitive as it once was, and so I am certainly open to suggestions. It's not a vote, it's not a poll. We're not going to be Sanctum McSanctum face, but if you have any ideas, love to hear them. You can drop
and Sanctum
those.
the Gathering is off the table too, Professor. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, the history prof. Johnny DeFish, yes, we appreciate your presence as well. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful night. We'll see you next month.
Be inspired.